Hey up. Right, so here we have it, the full review of the Royal Enfield Hunter 350. Now, I've already produced 2 videos intricately detailing the handling characteristics of this bike on various different road traffic conditions. And I will touch on those again briefly in this video. But if you want an in-depth review of how this bike handles on motorways, dual carriageways, heavy traffic, A and B roads and congested bumper-to-bumper city traffic, just click on the eye at the top right-hand corner of this screen and it will take you to those videos. But don't forget to come back to this one. Or better still, just wait until the end and then click on them. Now, first of all, I suppose we ought to discuss what the Hunter 350 is. I mean, we know what the classic 350 is. It's a modern reinterpretation of the 1949 Bullet. And we also know what the Meteor 350 is. It's, again, a reinterpretation of Royal Enfield cruiser-style motorcycles from the 1990s. Again, based on the Bullet. But the Hunter is something a little bit different. I know a lot of people have already compared it to Triumph's Street Twin, a sort of early 1970s motorcycle but with bang up to date technology and equipment. But actually this genre of motorcycle goes back a lot further than that, a lot further than Triumph. Kawasaki with the Zephyr models back in the early 1990s, and going even further back, Honda with the XBR model, or I think it was the XBR 500. Now, as far as Honda and Kawasaki were concerned, those bikes were way ahead of the time. The world wasn't ready for them, they didn't catch on. But Triumph did demonstrate with their Street Twin that a 1970s style motorcycle with a modern twist is very much in vogue at the moment. Other manufacturers have found similar success with similar models, and so enter the 2022 Hunter 350 from Royal Enfield. And in my opinion, Royal Enfield once again have nailed it. A 1970s style 350 single cylinder roadster, occupying a niche in the market that no one else has exploited, and executed with a style and panache that Royal Enfield are now well known for. Ha! Panache, that's a word I don't use very often. Now, one of the advantages of having a bike like this for a couple of weeks and making several videos is you can correct mistakes that you made in previous videos. I stated back in the very first video that I made, I think, that the chassis is pretty much the same as that of the Classic. They're not, but then again, at the same time, they are. They're basically the same frame, but there are some subtle differences here and there. So it's not simply a case of these bikes having different dress-up kits for the same chassis and engine. They are all actually quite unique, with some common denominators. Now, sticking with the aesthetics for the moment, all in all, I think everything falls in line with previous models. They've definitely upped the game with quality, fit and finish. They just, in my opinion, dropped the ball slightly with the Classic 350. I'm not sure what that's about, but that's the way it is. Now, in the case of this chassis, it sits on 17-inch alloy wheels, which are shod with a pair of Seat Zoom XLs. Some reviewers have lambasted these tyres, but I think it simply comes down to the fact that they've never heard of the manufacturer before, so they can't be any good. Don't believe a word of it. I found these to be perfectly competent tyres, and in my humble opinion, if you're having problems with them, you need to look at your own riding skills rather than the tyres. Seat are actually one of the biggest tyre manufacturers in the world, and they know exactly what they're doing. As an answer to many people's prayers, these are of course tubeless tyres, and I don't see any need to change these Seats until you've worn them out. Royal Enfield have tightened the rake up slightly on the Hunter compared to the other two models in the 350 range, and combined with these 17-inch tyres, this substantially quickens up the handling capabilities of the bike. Now, seating position with the assistance of my incredibly handsome twin brother. As you can see, compared to the classic, knees bent slightly more on the Hunter, it is a lower bike than the classic 350. The rider's foot pegs and controls on the Hunter 350 have been brought back slightly by about 6 inches. And the reach to the handlebars leans the rider forward very slightly to what is arguably a more relaxed and comfortable riding position than even the classic 350. I think the seating position on the Hunter is best described as a little bit less regimented than that of the classic. For a more relaxed feel, it brings the centre of gravity down slightly, which makes the bike a lot more agile and flickable when you're on the move. Now, just for your guidance, there is no perspective difference here. We're both parked side by side, and as you can see, my brother's shoulders on the Hunter are a little bit lower than mine on the classic 350. It's a good job it was available on the day. Now, what this seating position means is it feels sportier, it's definitely very comfortable, and it brings the rider's weight forward and down to assist with handling. Access to the toolkit is underneath the seat, which obviously is removable. And I have to say, looking over the entire bike, this is the only part of the bike where its low price point shows slightly. The side panels are up to the job, but they are incredibly thin and flimsy. Instead of a toggle to release the seat, there's a strange sort of loop on the end of the cable. It all works just fine, and to be quite honest, I don't envisage that it would give it any problems. It's just feels cheap. I feel unkind saying that because everything else on this bike is spot on, but it did jump out at me a little bit. Now, just to answer some questions that have previously been asked, apart from the toolkit having a storage point underneath the seat, there is no more additional storage for anything else. And I have to say, seat removal and refitting is very easy. Not a lot in the way of fumbling about to get everything lined up. Now, paintwork, once again, is really good. I assume it will be the same with all models. It's a standard base coat and clear. The graphics are applied to the base coat and then lacquered over. This obviously seals them in, so they'll be very long-lived and there'll be no peeling or curling at the edges. Pretty much the automotive standard these days. There is no chrome or polished alloy on this motorcycle. Absolutely everything that would normally have that kind of finish has a very thick, durable black powder coat. Not quite maintenance free, but with a little bit of care, this type of finish is obviously eminently suited to a Great British Winter or 3. Certainly far more suitable than polished alloy or chrome. The powder coating, both on the wheels, the engine, the exhaust and all relevant brackets, is slightly textured, and it also, my eye, matches pretty well throughout the bike. Absolutely no complaints there. I would just recommend protecting it using a maintenance spray of some sort, or something like Silcoline Pro Prep, after every wash to keep it looking nice and to protect it from contaminants. In that respect, I found the bike very easy to wash and keep clean. And cleaning and detailing afterwards is substantially quicker than the likes of the classic 350 because you don't have all that chrome to contend with. So in that respect, this bike will make the perfect commuter with minimum downtime required for care and cleaning. I'm not suggesting that you won't have problems if you neglect it, but the finishes that Royal Enfield have chosen for this bike constitute the easiest care possible for a motorcycle. Just as a guide, using a non-contact low water use method, including drying it off with a dryer and then using a protectant on all the surfaces, I found I could get the entire bike done in about 45 minutes. So keeping on top of it during the winter months isn't going to eat into a whole Sunday or Saturday. It should prove to be a very convenient bike in that respect. The instrument pod is a pretty standard setup that we've seen on the 350 Meteor, with an analog speedo, no rev counter, fuel gauge, odo, trip 1 and 2, and of course a gear position indicator. It also has a clock and that strange little eco indicator, which I haven't quite worked out whether they're worth having yet or not. Out on the open road, riding at normal traffic speeds, you should expect to see around about 100 miles to the gallon from this little 350cc engine. That gives you a theoretical tank range of round about 280 miles. Push the bike hard on a regular basis and you will see that drop substantially, reducing your tank mileage to about 150-160 miles to the tank, which to be honest is still very acceptable. The switchgear is the same that we've seen on the classic 350 and the Meteor. Not exactly premium, but it's very intuitive, it all works very well, and I've found it to be very reliable. You do of course have the addition of hazard warning lights on these bikes, as well as a USB 2 plug situated on the left hand handlebar, in case you want to charge your phone up or use it as a sat nav on your travels. Hand on heart, I can honestly say this is the best handling and the most comfortable of the three 350cc models that Royal Enfield are currently producing. I did find on my very first ride that it seemed to have a tendency to oversteer, but that's because the handling is very quick, and I've been used to riding the lumbering 350 and 500cc classics. So that's not a criticism of the bike, it's more to do with what I'd been used to riding. I soon adjusted to that and it was no problem. The brakes are excellent, they're the same units that are fitted to the other two bikes, but this bike is a little bit lighter, and you also have the 17-inch wheels which generate a lot less leverage than the larger wheels of the other two bikes. The end result is that, especially compared to the 350 Classic, the brakes bite a lot harder, a lot easier, and generally have a feeling of being more powerful, even though they're not. So definitely no complaints in the braking department. The clutch is light, it feeds in nicely, I certainly had no problems with it, and throttle response is gradual, predictable, exactly as a throttle should be. It has been mooted to me by one viewer, who may have a point, is that the engine has a substantially larger flywheel than most modern motorcycles, which does help to dampen the throttle response a little bit. That may well be the case. Either way, it makes for a very civilised throttle response that will not catch the unwary out. This little 350 Hunter is an incredibly stable motorcycle. It doesn't seem to be adversely affected by side winds, which surprised me. It corners like it's on rails, it gives really good feedback through the suspension, which is on the taut side, yet still very comfortable, which is exactly what you want to get confidence-inspiring feedback from the road. Harris Performance, in conjunction with Royal Enfield, have done an absolutely splendid job of sorting the geometry of this bike out. My personal opinion is it's the best handling Royal Enfield I've ridden so far. It's a rider's bike. This 350 single cylinder engine obviously isn't endowed with an awful lot of horsepower, but it does have enough power and acceleration to keep up with normal traffic on normal A and B roads. It's fast enough to get out of busy junctions without putting yourself in danger, and it's an absolute hoot on country back lanes. The congested urban cycle and the 60-mile-an-hour back roads are this bike's natural habitat. That's where it thrives. But it can still do motorways if it has to, and it can do them all day. The engine on this bike is exceptionally smooth, parallel twin smooth, but it's clear that the sweet spot is around 70 miles an hour in top gear. That's where the engine feels its most harmonious, and an experienced rider should have no reservations about venturing onto the motorway or 70 mile an hour dual carriageways with this bike. Just manage your expectations. Some hills will slow down, as will headwinds, making 60 to 65 miles an hour a more realistic prospect than 70 miles an hour. But again, I don't see any problem doing 60 miles an hour on a motorway. Plenty of other vehicles are doing it. So, the last questions that are being asked. What is this bike for? And who is it for? Actually, I always think that is a really patronising and presumptuous label to put on any motorcycle. And to be honest, I think it's probably, in your average review, the most inaccurate part of the review. Oh, it's a tourer, or it's only good for commuting. Leading the viewer to believe that this bike is only good for certain things. The truth of the matter is, any bike will commute. Any bike can tour. Top speed and horsepower don't really come into it. This bike will keep up with the traffic in most situations in the UK. It's capable on most roads, so really this bike can do anything. It's light, nimble and agile in traffic, so it'll make a great commuter. It'll carve up the twisty back roads at legal speeds, so yeah, it'll be a great Sunday afternoon backroad scratcher. And it'll do those things while sipping fuel in tiny quantities. But I've found this bike to be incredibly comfortable for long distances without a brake. And that for me is the number one consideration with any tourer. When I'm touring, I don't tour to get from A to B as quickly as is humanly possible. I like to experience the road and the environment around me. I like to drink in the scenery. And with the right luggage, this is the perfect bike for that. And again, it will do that while sipping fuel in tiny quantities. So yes, it's also a tourer. In fact, this bike is anything you want it to be. And if you're watching this video and it's not big enough, powerful enough, or fast enough for you, what the hell are you doing here in the first place? And then there's the other ridiculous prediction that reviewers make. One that actually always really gets up my nose. This is a bike for short people. This is a bike for ladies. This is a bike for beginners. It's not a bike for the experienced rider. You'd soon get fed up of it and want something that's more challenging. The art and spirit of true motorcycling is the rider and motorcycle working together in harmony. You can't do that if the bike is challenging you. The worldwide motorcycle press has been too wrapped up in speed and danger, displacement and power for far too long. In my mind, there was never any place for it, but it's definitely an outdated concept in this day and age. They themselves have fallen for the motorcycle manufacturers' marketing. That's why Royal Enfield are rising above other well-established motorcycle manufacturers in the current market, because they're making motorcycles that people want, not motorcycles that people have been told they should have. And this is one of them. Now, if you're an extremely tall person, yeah, this bike might not suit you. Your best bet is to go along to a dealership and try one for size. It's definitely going to be fine for shorter people. I'm sure a lot of ladies are going to like this bike. And yes, it's the perfect bike for a beginner. But that's not the limit of its appeal. I'm no spring chicken. I've ridden dozens and dozens of bikes over the years. And for me, this bike is perfect. Handling and performance is enough to keep you engaged. But as a rider, I found that I soon harmonised with this bike. It's that sweet spot in motorcycling that a lot of bigger bikes are missing. If I wanted a challenge, I would take up rock climbing, or I would try to match up a pair of socks after my girlfriend's done the washing. I certainly wouldn't want a motorcycle that's a challenge. I want something that will do what I want it to do, get me from A to B in a manner that suits me without having to stop it from trying to kill me all the time. I do realise, and a lot of people have mentioned this, that this marketing for this bike has been aimed at younger riders. That's fair enough. But this is a bike that is stylish in a classical way. And style and class appeal to all age groups, not just youngsters. So if you're a seasoned rider who has control of his ego, I've got no doubt whatsoever that you might find this bike perfect for you. The Hunter 350 is a bike that can do anything for anybody. especially if they want a new bike and they're on a tight budget. It's perfect. Right, once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I hope you found this review useful. If you have, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you do subscribe, ensure that you hit the notification bell and that all your notifications are enabled. That way you'll be informed whenever I upload a new video. I am of course going to be back on Friday, so until then, please ride safely and I'll see you soon.